In the dynamic world of frontline operations, the spotlight has been on optimizing workflows through asset visibility. And that's a critical pillar of operational intelligence. Asset visibility is quickly creating a world where we have a real time view of the frontline environment, enabling us to generate insights leading to more real time tasks execution. This move to real time tasking requires a new approach to mobilize our workers, the connected frontline. And this concept moves beyond traditional enterprise mobility, emphasizing team orchestration, real time collaboration, and intelligent decision making. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving tech space. And I'm your host, Priya Dayalani. Every business owner and employee would agree that doing anything necessary to prevent harm to people while at work is both a necessary investment and an ideal goal. The good news is that AI in workplace safety is enhancing frontline safety greatly by requiring little effort for big rewards. Let's welcome Pulkit Ahuja, founder and CEO Proxgy, to discuss the growing landscape of wearable AI for frontline workers. Hi, Pulkit. A very warm welcome to our podcast today.
Hi Priya, thank you so much for having me at your podcast.
Great. So, Pulkit, of course, we are going to, discuss a lot about the use of AI in ensuring the protection and safety of frontline workers. Before we, dive deeper into it, let's tell our listeners more about Proxgy, a very interesting name, and, if you could elaborate its specialization as well. Alongside that, we would also like to know more about you, Pulkit. How has your journey been till date, and what led you to found Proxgy?
Sure. So the name proxy comes from two words. Proxy, as in a human proxy, and technology. Both of them combined give you proxy. And the vision when we were starting proxy back in 2020 during the first lockdown of COVID was to connect a billion plus people who are not working on a desk. But before I move on to what I mean by that, just to give you a background about myself also. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I am a published author. I have written a couple of books, including a national bestseller called Googled by God. And I also happen to be a product guy myself, having over 25 inventions to my name, including world's first drone-assisted driving technology, which BYD recently launched in one of their cars, and also earthquake protection bed. So that's my background. Before Proxy, I have founded two companies. The last company I founded was called Cabs Guru, which was into super aggregation of all the first level cab aggregators. And Proxy we founded in 2020 during the first lockdown because of all the issues that we were observing the industry while we were serving a lot of clients. And that is where the idea of people being at one place in an industrial environment, but being able to connect and collaborate with someone who's, say, 2000 kilometers apart, where communication is important, but commuting might not be possible, is the prime idea behind Proxy. So, what happened was so if you think about the last 10 or 12 years of tech evolution across the world, you'll definitely have worked and used some of the tools and technologies like Zoho, Notion, Atlassian, Jira, combined with Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, Zoom calls of the world. All these tools and technologies that have been developed till date have given the white collar workers of the world, the software engineers, the project managers, the tech capability to remotely connect and collaborate with each other. For example, if we consider a senior project manager who works at Apple in the Palo Alto office, and he has a 200 member team who's working out of, say, Dubai or Delhi or Perth. Using this ecosystem that we have available, the manager can at a real time connect, collaborate, and work with all his 200 team members at a moment's notice. Right. But if we try and think of a single such technology that gives this tech progress that has existed for over a decade now to the blue collar workers of the world, people working in oil and gas fields, mines, refineries, production plants, manufacturing units, windmills, solar plants, policing, you'll fail to come up with a single such technology that gives this tech capability that has existed for more than a decade to these billion plus people globally, which represents 78% of the world's working population. And the reason behind this is that all the tech that we discuss, all the tools that we discuss, have just been developed and designed for two devices. One is a laptop, and the second is a mobile phone slash tablets. There is no third device where you can use these existing ecosystems or tools and technologies. And when we talk about blue collar workers of the world, when we talk about people who are using PPE kits, who are wearing gloves, who are wearing helmets, and in a field or an environment where every movement is a physical danger or an accident is waiting to happen or can happen, it's practically impossible and infeasible to either use a laptop or a mobile phone in actual environment. And that is where Proxy comes in with its complete tech stack to ensure that these people are now having the tech availability to be safe, to be productive, to be connected while on the job, while on the field, even in the most discreet or most diversified environments.
That's a very great overview about the company, Pulkit, and also about your journey. And we are really glad to understand how you and Proxgy basically are trying to, create a difference and ensuring the innovation is right in that space and with more practical and outcome driven solutions. Building on that, Pulkit, now industries, such as manufacturing, logistics, construction, energy, workforce management continues to face large scale inefficiencies, labor shortages, or even rising operational complexities. What's particularly interesting is that startups entering these sectors are no longer just building software products. They are redesigning how industries function at scale through AI, automation, and workforce transformation. And in many ways, solving these foundational problems can create long-term economic impact far beyond the short-term engagement metrics. So why is it important for startups to focus on large-scale industrial and workforce problems rather than just focusing on consumer convenience?
So I believe for any startup that is serving blue collar workers for a long term manner, and it has to be long term actually because, like you rightly said, it's no longer just a software or a AI play. It's you need a physical node or a physical touch point, like I was mentioning to you before, that it is practically not possible to use existing mass available products like laptops and mobile phones in these working conditions and working environments, right? So you any startup that wants to cater to this market will have to innovate and invent something that becomes a touch point or a kind of a link to the backend layer of software and AI. And that is where like we at Proxgy have invented over six very, very niche and innovative products, including the world's first smart safety helmet for the users and the workers in manufacturing, construction, oil and gas, mines to use. So, and the emphasis behind any of these inventions has to be a very, very low resistance to change and a very, or it I would say zero user behavior change for that matter. So the idea behind us inventing a smart safety helmet, the smart hat as we call it, was that every user is required by law to wear safety helmet when he's in these fields or he's in these sites. And they were just wearing piece of plastic. So what we did was we created the world's smartest safety helmet wherein you have complete body parameter monitoring, fall detection, 360-degree audio video calling, you have world's smallest gas leakage detectors, so the and AI on edge. So the helmet now from a formality of wearing a piece of plastic on your head that you were not using for anything else becomes a safety device which gives you physical protection, but then it also becomes your AI buddy on the field, wherein you need any help, you are at 200 feet, you are a lone worker working on some dangerous activity, and you need someone's help. With a click of a button or your audio command, the helmet gives you the world's intelligence right where you need it at a moment's notice. So, building anything like this would be a long-term prospect, like you were asking. So, it cannot be built overnight. Softwares are easy to build, to code, to deploy. But anything that needs hardware, and this ecosystem, you will need an hardware for, like I was mentioning, for it to be a touch point for the worker, because he's not using your other touch points. He's not using a laptop, he's not using a mobile phone. So innovating, researching, developing, testing, certifying a hardware product has to be a 2 to 3 year cycle. And whenever you're doing getting into such kind of activities, there would be a lot of failures, there would be a lot of iterative loops, and that is where you'll have to focus on the long-term incentives and not just a short-term going by. And the second thing, Priya, that becomes very important when you have something like this is you are aggregating a lot of data points, and these data points can give you actionable intelligence only in the long term. There's a lot of pattern recognition, there's a lot of behavior recognition that happens, and those can be implemented for solving very, very perennial problems, but only in the long term.
That's an important perspective, Pulkit. And I think some of the biggest opportunities for startups actually lie in solving the foundational problems, whether it's industrial efficiency or workforce productivity, or even solving the complexities of the supply chain. And again, when startups address the larger ecosystem challenges, the impact goes far beyond the basic metrics that we usually stick to in terms of measuring the value a startup is creating. It can influence employment, economic growth, and even national innovation capacity. Great. Pulkit, now, if we talk about AI, I think AI has moved from pilot projects to practical deployment in occupational safety. A new generation of wearable devices, sensors, exoskeletons, and smart tags, they now provide real-time monitoring, predictive analytics, and instant feedback that help companies prevent injuries before they occur. So the result is a decisive shift from reactive incident management to a proactive risk control with, of course, tangible benefits, which enhances the overall worker well-being and compliance and operational performance. So what role do wearable and connected technology play in shaping the future of industrial safety, and if you can highlight Proxgy role in it?
So I think it has a very big role, and this will keep on increasing when we're talking about industrial safety and how this is shaping and how this is actually impacting people. So to start with safety, like you said, for safety, whatever traditional methods were available and the reactive and the proactive approaches and the vast difference between them has only been possible because of this evolution that has happened gradually, but now is picking up steam across multiple sectors, across multiple countries. And I believe India would be at the forefront because of our innovation and our workforce, wherein we have the most humongous test cases, which would once deployed in Indian conditions would definitely be replicable across the globe at a much optimized cost of deployment. And that we are anyway seeing at Proxy also, we are deploying multiple technologies for our clients, and they come back to us and tell us that they want this technology to now be scaled up to their global operations for something that has been proven to work in India. So safety is definitely the first aspect. The second one is the connectivity aspect. Till date, if we talk about the worker of the future, he has to be an always connected worker. Like if you are sitting out of your office, you're always connected. Either it's through the calls that you're having on your phone or the Zoom calls or your laptop, you're all or your Slack boards, you're always connected. But a worker who's say 2000 kilometers from the nearest residential area in a outskirt servicing a 20 kVA power line. How do you ensure that he is connected? How do you make sure that he has the same advanced technology that is available to anyone who's working out in office? So that's the second point. And the third, eventually, because of the first and the second points, would lead to increased productivity, wherein because you're always connected, you don't have to wait multiple iterative cycles to debug any issue that you're having on the field. And because you don't have to be concerned about your safety every moment, you'll see a definitive impact in the productivity of the person or the worker who's using these technologies.
Very well said, Pulkit. And I think, wearable and connected technologies today, I think it sounded like buzzwords and science fiction a couple of years back, but today they are no longer viewed as optional productivity tools. I think they are becoming a critical layer of the modern industrial ecosystem. And, they are helping bridge the gap between human capability and real-time digital intelligence on the ground. And I think Proxy seems to be playing an important role in shaping that transition by creating solutions that make remote expertise and assisted operations and the overall connected intelligence more accessible at scale. Having said
Right.
that, Pulkit, now, you also mentioned about India's position, in terms of becoming a global leader. I mean, in the last couple of years, if you look at the trajectory of India's growth or acceleration towards digitization, it's emerging as an undisputed leader, I feel. Its vast talent pool and supportive regulatory framework has helped propel the growth journey over the decades. During this time, I think there have been several attempts by Indian companies to build software products which met with mixed success. And now the Indian companies, both large ones and most importantly startups, are making strides in the deep tech space. So how do you think India can position itself as a global leader in deep tech solutions, especially with the Make in India movement? I think it has influenced, a lot of startups to think about product development and scale. So, what are your views on it?
So I have a couple of, so we do this day in and day out. We do this for a living, right? So we are very close to the ground on what is happening. So there's definitely a lot of government support and incentive to make in India, and like we are doing at Proxy, to make products in India that are globally scalable, right? But ecosystem that is needed for the development and deployment of these products requires a lot of patient capital. So that is something that India is now maturing towards. So India usually follows the US market, and right now, if we see the most of the highest funded companies, they're not deep tech or hardware companies in India. And the reason is because hardware or product development or innovation takes time. It's highly risky. It's not a gig economy that we have a proven model of every product needs to be proven after investment, after years of research and development and optimization, right? So that we are now seeing that kind of capital coming in with the government support. But then you also have the other side wherein people have been exploiting the system and the good faith by just, so there's this concept of CKD, which is a completely knockdown system. A lot of companies have been putting or using or misusing, to be correct, the Make in India ecosystem, wherein you get those CKDs from China, which are actually manufactured in China and then assembled in India, but then sold as made in India. So that is something when we started, we saw a lot happening. And as expected, people have started pointing it out. Companies and governments have started pointing it out that this is something that is not appreciated. And if you are genuinely building in India, you're not assembling but making in India, that is something that is being supported over assembling or just mere trading and white labeling. So that is a shift that we are seeing. Definitely, whichever startups are a early starter in this domain, they would be at a much better position in the years to come because they have spent a lot of time, energy, building that kind of an ecosystem for themselves, which for all practical purposes, you were earlier reliant on China.
Very well said, Pulkit. And I agree with you that India is no longer just being viewed as a large consumer market or a cost-efficient tech hub. We are now entering a phase where India has the opportunity to become a creator of the globally relevant industrial technologies and deep tech breakthroughs. And I think there's also a shift in the way the industries are approaching innovation. They are not just focusing on software-led disruption. I think the transition is towards solving more complex and real-world industrial challenges through emerging technologies like AI, robotics, or clean energy technologies. And I think this creates a huge opportunity for India to build solutions not just for domestic demand, but for global industries as well.
Right, very rightly said.
Yes. So, of course, we discussed about, how India can position itself. But when, for example, a startup is going into that phase of building a deep tech company in India today, I think with that, I think startups they have to go through a lot of processes and regulations and finding a path to commercialization and scale. We understand that Make in India movement has added a new layer of momentum, but despite the optimism, there are still important questions around the funding, infrastructure, and policy support. So, what are certain, I wouldn't say mistakes, but what are the biggest realities of building a deep tech company in India today?
So the realities would be around working on first principles. You'll have to lead with IP-led innovation, I believe, will be defining a long-term competitiveness and success of a startup. The founders should not be chasing trends, but actually creating long-term value. And that kind of value creation takes time, takes patience, takes a lot of execution prowess. And if executed correctly, that would lead to scalability, reliability, and then eventually commercial viability. So that's my thought process behind how we can build this up. And then also for anyone who's wanting to scale up a deep tech or a new category creation or a new concept, you'll have to integrate very smoothly. You'll have to ensure that your product integrates very smoothly into the existing workflows. Whatever you're doing is reliable and also critical for industries, and you have a very strong deployment, you have measurable ROIs, and it has to be practical at end of the day. You cannot ask industry that has been operating in a particular way for 100 years to just change overnight. And that is where my point of zero or as minimum user behavior change as possible becomes the practical aspect of building large scale and economical products.
Right, Pulkit, and I think there's a huge difference between how deep tech entrepreneurship is perceived from the outside and what it takes to build from the ground up. And I think India currently is entering a phase where deep tech is no longer just an experimental ecosystem conversation. It's getting closely tied to the national priorities, digital sovereignty, and global competitiveness. So, understanding these ground realities in terms of your perspectives becomes extremely valuable, especially for aspiring founders or even enterprises who are looking to collaborate with deep tech innovators.
Sure. And I also, I mean, I keep learning whenever I meet new founders. There's so much happening every day. I mean, very happening and a good place to explore future billion-dollar enterprises, which would be
Right.
making actual differences on the ground.
Hmm. And Pulkit, I think businesses know that failing to innovate or keeping up with the technological advancements will put them at a very serious competitive disadvantage. But on the other hand, it's also not easy to adopt new technologies and integrate them into their existing systems. So, what does it actually take for industrial and enterprise customers to truly adopt these emerging technologies at scale? Or what are the certain steps you would, share, or certain aspects you would share to keep in mind when adopting these technologies?
So I think it has to start with a clear understanding of the problem statements that are being solved and then the ROIs. And definitely there has to be a collaboration between startups, the industries, the industrial houses, and the policymakers as well. Without that, the startups, even if they're innovating, the products cannot be adopted. So there has to be policies around it, and then there has to be incentives for the industries to adopt those products, which will eventually lead to long-term savings and improvements in the processes.
Thanks for sharing that, Pulkit. And I think there's an interesting aspect here. It's a shift in the mindset. It's important that, initially from the ground up, it's important that you shift your mindset towards these emerging technologies, not just as innovation headlines, but try to look for tangible operational value and resilience and competitive advantage.
Right, definitely. Without a competitive advantage, I mean, even if you have the best of the investors, if
Hmm.
you are not creating any incremental value and advantage for your customers, it becomes very, very difficult to survive in this market, right?
Right, I agree with you, Pulkit, and I think that's where the entire, the focus should be or the agenda to be, because if your customers are really can't relate with you or resonate with you, I
Right.
think they would in a flip of seconds they would just find someone else. And like we know that today's landscape is so competitive, finding an alternate service provider has become also very easy that way. So, yeah, I think for tech companies, it's like a clear call to action that don't just create great products and services, create them and make it as easy as possible for businesses to adopt them. With that being said, one last question for you, Pulkit, is what advice would you give to, founders building deep tech or industrial sectors today?
So my advice would be that deep tech and industrial innovation is a long-term play. Don't enter it if you are just chasing trends or you're just chasing the fads, which keeps shifting from one to another. This would require a successful deep tech startup or a successful innovation-led startup would require a lot of commitment, a lot of patience, and long-term planning. So if you are geared up for this, then there's a lot of potential that we believe India has, especially with its talent pool, the industrial expansion, and also the Make in India for the World initiative that is being grown and governed and incubated out of the country. But if you're just in it for the glamour, this would be a very tough place for you to be.
Well, I agree with you, Pulkit, and I think deep tech startups and or founders or probably even aspiring entrepreneurs who are willing to enter into this space have got some incredible insights today in this episode, Pulkit. And thank you for sharing those with us. And of course, if you talk about Proxgy, I think AI is making frontline safety easier to achieve and enhance. With its countless applications and low barriers to entry. With safety first as a constant and primary goal, the addition of AI makes it easily achievable. So, thank you so much, Pulkit, for taking all the time and effort to be on a podcast today and sharing some incredible insights. And I think it's certainly going to be interesting to watch how this space evolves over the next few years, the deep tech ecosystem, and how innovation continues to redefine it on a global scale. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights with our audience, Pulkit. It was truly a great conversation.
Thank you, Priya. Likewise. And it was a pleasure being on your podcast and looking forward to more such opportunities.
Great. Thanks, Pulkit. So, this is for listeners. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion around wearable and connected devices for frontline workers' safety. And of course, the accelerating and the growing ecosystem of deep tech innovations and how companies are trying to make space in the ecosystem and make India a global hub for it. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and you can view all our previous episodes on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.